All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jake Hall. I'm the manufacturing millennial. And joining me, as always, Chris Luecke. Chris, how you doing?
I'm great. I'm coming at you live, as you can tell, from a hotel room in somewhat sunny Denver, Colorado today. So I'm doing great. It's always nice when you can wake up with a mountain view.
Oh, absolutely. It's always beautiful. The fact is, when we can get out in person again. I'm having my first trade show next week. And then you and we're both going to be at a trade show not too far away in just a few weeks.
IME West, April 12th through 14th. It's coming up. I think it literally is just under 3 weeks now. So it is
Awesome.
sneaking up fast.
Very cool. Well, today, everyone, and looks like awesome. Welcome, Tim. Tim Wilborn with TW Controls. Thanks for joining us. We hope to give you some information. We know you're going to be going to quite a few trade shows as well this year. So everyone who's here, feel free, let us know you're in chat. We don't know you're here with the platform unless you make a comment. So feel free to comment. Let us know you're here. We'll put you up on the platform, and we love to have this as an interactive conversation. Well, today we're really going to be talking about, some fun stuff, and that's going to be I'm going to 22 trade shows this year. Chris, you're probably stacked up well over a dozen as well in the next 6 months or so.
There are a bunch of, just think it's weird, right? Because I was spending the last 2 months kind of just prepping for the year ahead. But you're right, over 10 on the agenda as it is for various reasons in various industries. So it should be another fun 2022, especially as I look at 2021 as a kind of a practice year to get back in the swing of doing trade shows.
Yep, absolutely. And that's just the one thing when we look at a trade show, a lot of people say, well, I don't get the value out of a trade show like I once used to. I'll go there, I'll see product, but I never see a big return. And really what we want to focus on is how do you get a better return on the full trade show investment as a attendee. We're not going to be talking about the exhibitor side today. We're going to be talking about when I'm walking on a floor, when Chris is walking on a floor. We want to know, hey, who do we want to connect with? What do we want to do? And really, where do we start? Especially if you're going to a trade show that has 500 exhibitors, 300 exhibitors, whatever that number is, leading up to the show. You're going to feel overwhelmed, especially if you're only there for 1 or 2 days. There's no way you can always get through every single booth and talk to every single person. So how do you prepare?
Yeah, I agree. And like, how do you prepare? It starts, honestly, it starts now. It starts 2 weeks before the event. Start budgeting time early for an event, because that's really where you can get the most out of it, when you know who you want to meet and what you want to get out of the event. Those are the two things that I look at each time.
Absolutely. So Chris and we're both going to be at IME West in a few weeks in Anaheim, California. IME West is helping us put on this show today, really just to share the information of how you can get more out of an event. And if you want to join IME West, I'm going to go ahead and post this in the description. Feel free to go ahead, click that link, register. It's free to attend, and you're really going to enjoy a lot of the content. So Chris, when you're going to a trade show, what is the first thing? You already booked your ticket. You already registered, right? You're going. We don't need to talk about that logistics side. I could go into ever and how do you properly book a ticket and get your travel? But let's say that's already set and taken care of. What are some of the first things that you look at right away in preparation for a trade show?
Yeah, the first thing I do, this is super basic, right? But I'm going to get more to the details after this. Like, however you stay organized, I know a lot of people use tools like OneNote, or people use tools like Evernote. I create a master note file for that event, right? So it's like, and I start filling in, I would say usually it starts with me looking at the speakers and the sessions. I put more of an emphasis on like meeting the speakers and like meeting the attendees than I would say on the sessions themselves. But I start looking through and getting a map of like, what are my must do activities? Who are the people that if I'm going to this show, I need to have a meeting with them, or I need to make an introduction with this company. I start prioritizing, hey, what's like the make or break stuff for the event.
Yeah.
That's the first step. And then I start looking at, the things that would be nice to do while I'm there, right? Basically creating that priority order. And then, of course, saving time for serendipity, right? You can have a good plan going in. You can have a meeting set up. But I think anyone that's attended a trade show before knows it's hectic, right? Meeting times move around, things change. And it's important to have some time to just be on the show floor, or when you're at that networking event, take extra time with the person you just met. Because I'll be honest, like when I start looking at the speakers and things for the event, really it's based on, hey, what are my goals for this event? And when it comes to meeting people, I usually say if I can walk away with 3 amazing new connections, that's great, because there's no doubt I'll walk away with a bunch of business cards, in the, upwards of 30 business cards, right? But if I can make a good connection with a few really key people, whether I plan to meet them or not, maybe it was just someone I ran into and started a conversation with, and it turns out, hey, we have business synergies. Those are the first thing I'm doing, is goal setting and figuring out who are some of the people I want to meet. But before I get into too much, Jake, what are some of the things you do in addition to that?
The first thing that I always look at is I always want to know who are the main speakers and what are the keynote events going to be, because a lot of time I like to plan my time around that. The exhibitor floors normally open from 9 a.m., 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So that's a throughout the day thing. So I want to make sure when I'm booking out my calendar, I say, okay, what events are my key priorities each day? And I'll put those in my calendar. And then after I booked out what are my main events, I go and say, okay, what are the networking events that I want to be being a part of? So a lot of times I think people forget what the trade show is just part of the floor exhibit is just part of the main trade show. You have to realize that a trade show, the floor might open up at 10 a.m., but events started at 7 a.m. That morning. And a lot of times it's different keynotes, it's first timer events, it's networking events, it's going, and different societies are going to be there. So you could have a women's in manufacturing event leading up to that show before it even kicks off. So
one thing I'm thinking of, right? It's, with a trade show, a lot of times it's your company's sending you to a trade show, right?
Yeah.
You're an engineer, you're an account manager, whatever that might be. This applies to anyone, right? Whether you're the business owner or whether you're an attendee, but you got to think of it as you own your time at that event, right? And you need to craft that schedule such that it's going to maximize your experience there. So if it's a particular keynote, if it's a particular one-on-one meeting, it's a particular group meeting, you're the one that needs to be managing those blocks of time.
Yes.
So what are the things that can only occur at this time, and what are the things that might have some flexibility?
Yep, absolutely. So the one thing after I had that down is I begin to look at my show floor. And that's the one thing that I like to look up. Actually, I'm going to share my screen real quick, Chris. I think there's a really good setup that we could have here. And let's pull this up. Let's push us over to the side. And so this is the SMART event for IME West. And you can see right on the middle of the screen here, that's actually our intro. So Chris and I, we are giving weekly updates for the SMART event for IME West. And with that registration link that I just shared, and I can go ahead and I can post again. If you guys want to, go and check out this event if you are in the western part of the United States. For me, I always viewed ATX West, which is one of the 5 shows that are part of IME, as really one of the leaders, pretty much the leading automation robotics show on the West Coast. I can't think of a larger event that takes place out there, and it's going to be happening in a few weeks in April.
But yeah, it's I think an important thing to mention that we're talking about IME West. You might know IME West is one of these events that you see at the bottom of our screen, right? Jake and I both came up through the automation industry, and I spent 5.5 years of my career out in San Francisco, and ATX West was always the event that you went to, like on the West Coast, and quite frankly, across the U.S. as well. But hey, if you're in the medical space, MD&M West probably rings a bell. We got Plastech out there as well. So whatever industry you're in, chances are there's an event that's part of IME West.
Yep, absolutely. So one of the first things that I always do when I go on that website is the networking events. And this is a lot of times, it's actually one of those things that you might want to look at even before you book your flight, because a lot of times people say, well, I want to get out of that flight right when that show ends at 5 o'clock. Well, maybe you should stay to 7 and eventually do a networking event afterwards. So this is the first thing that I look at. As you can see on the platform, I already registered for all these. So there's the keynote networking breakfast. So we're going to be there. I'll be doing the networking breakfast from 8 to 9. There's the booth beer crawl. So, I mean, what automation show or show would you want to go to that does not, that has a beer crawl? You would, of course, want to go to every single one of them, And Chris, obviously, with Manufacturing Happy Hour,
it's got a nice tie-in. Yeah, I'm not upset that there's a beer crawl, booth crawl that's part of this event.
And that's happening on the exhibitor show floor. This isn't something like that they're pulling you off site. No, you literally will go on the floor. They'll have beer tents popping up on the floor, and you could drink beer while networking with people in these areas.
And Jake, one thing we should mention, like everything we're talking about here in terms of specifics, like it's all about using the tools that you have to plan for the event to do it most effectively, right? Yeah. Like IME West has put together a really nice platform for this event, but if your event that you're going to doesn't have that, you can research, who the speakers are, usually on the event website as well. But hey, if there's a tool like this, I mean, it's made it easier for us just to map out our schedule, figure out what speakers and attendees we want to connect with. I don't want to give too much away yet because we're going to jump into that soon. But, the reason we're talking about this today is, this event has come up with a lot of easy ways to allow us to plan ahead most effectively.
Absolutely. And so beyond just the networking events, the biggest thing that I always look for is, what am I interested in when going to a trade show? And for me, I always want to know smart manufacturing, robotics, automation, everything around the skilled trades area. Those are the subjects that I like to see. Vision systems, packaging, conveyor, logistics. Those are the type of topics that I love to get visuals of. So I can go into Fine Products and Services, and every single show is going to have their version of this. This just makes it really simple for me, where I can go out and say, oh, additive manufacturing. I want to go and learn who's doing additive manufacturing. And then I can go and simply click and say, oh, here is a freeformer by Auburn. So here's a plastic injection company that also has started their own additive business. So I can add that as a tag. And just from that, I can add that to, I'm now going to go visit Arborg as a company that I want to see on the floor, especially when you have a floor this massive. So this is the floor plan that's going to be broken out at the IME West event. So there's all these different booths that are available. If we go out and we show the subfloor, we can say, oh, hey, here's ATX West, here's MDM, here's Plastech, here's Westpac. And then from that, I can see from the events that I selected, I can go and view where they're at on the floor. Chris, what's another thing that you like to see as a takeaway from an event before I hop into the next thing that I like to look for on digital platforms?
Well, when I'm looking around, I like to get visibility to as many people as I can that are attending the event, right? Because, if you're selecting an event that's relative to your industry, you pretty well know there are going to be people that speak the same language as you there, right? That understand Industry 4.0, digital transformation, additive manufacturing, med device manufacturing, pick your category there. So you're going to an event where other people like you that are in your industry are going to be. So I pay really close attention if I have the opportunity to look at, not only the speakers, but who else is attending the event. And is there a way that I can connect with them in advance? Because it's one thing to, bump into someone at a networking function that you've never met before. But it's another thing to have a plan of, hey, these are some people that I'd really like to get in touch with when I'm there that, maybe I haven't met before.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there are a lot of places, once you register, you can go on, you can look at that platform and you can see who's attending. So I can go through here and I could say, oh, who's the job function that I want to be, interacting with people. So I can look at engineering, automation, and assembly. And here's all the people who are attending. So I could see, hey, there's some people from Rivian attending. There's some people from all these different companies. And I can then connect with those and saying, hey, I will love to meet with you at the event. In my case, I'm a guy that loves highlighting and talking about automation. So I love to learn about what are some fun solutions that you guys are putting out in the industry. So it breaks down to all these different types of groups that are out there. And maybe you're not looking for engineering. Maybe you're looking for someone in marketing that can help you with, your own marketing business. You can go out there and see what marketing companies or what people in marketing are doing to support manufacturers.
And it goes back to that point of the first thing you got to do for one of these shows is figure out what your goals are for attending, right? Like, we've talked a little bit about additive manufacturing, right? Say you're looking for 3 new key suppliers in additive manufacturing, right? You build your research around that goal. So looking at the sessions you're going to attend, looking at the people that you want to work with. And I think it's important to mention, like, there in this platform, there are ways to connect with people. You and I also do that on LinkedIn, right? When you're connecting with someone, don't make it salesy. That's another thing, right? Like
Yeah.
you're just seeing if the person's interested in being a connection at that point, right? And sure, you want to provide context, but Jake, as you know, as someone that's frequently on LinkedIn that gets hit up with sales pitches on LinkedIn every day, you don't want to be that person. You want to be the one that's like, hey, I saw that you work for, insert company here. Really like what you guys do. Would love to connect and learn more, right?
Yeah.
And then, you might connect with some people, you might not, right? But you got to start putting in that effort to figure out, hey, who are the type of people I want to meet with based on the goals of the event, and start making those, warmer connection requests.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's great to be connecting with a lot of, attendees, but also the exhibitors itself. A lot of times when we're in a mood to see what new technology is out there, we're going to a show to get a very, in-depth look at a lot of equipment, test it out, and see if it's a fit for our applications.
Yeah.
So when we're going out there and we want to visit a company like Universal Robots, we can go out there and say, hey, I want to book a time to meet with them to make sure that I have a time set up to go over my application specifically. But I think the other thing that we want to leverage is connect with them on social media platforms as well. I think that's the one thing that we as a group have a fault of. It is fantastic to have in-person events and connections, but don't let that networking die at the end of the trade show or the conference.
Yeah.
Make sure that's carrying on social platforms beyond the event, so you can be in touch with the exhibitors or the attendees that you network with. So you can go on and make sure, hey, Universal Robots is there. I want to go make sure that I am following them as a company to be what's up to date and the latest technology.
It's cool that you bring this up, especially on this screen, because you have those social icons. What I've done specifically for this one, and really this applies to any show that I attend, is I send a connection request on the event platform, right? And then I'll, use that social icon to quickly go to that company or that person's social profile, because chances are they've spent more time at LinkedIn, right? Everyone's been on LinkedIn for a long time. And I can go there and say, hey, shot you a connection request in the smart event for IME West. Wanted to connect with you here as well, in case you haven't jumped in there yet. So it's kind of a two-way street to meet with those people. And you made an incredible point that I go by all the time. It's like, make the event live on after the event. We've been talking about ways to prepare and what to do at the event, but I think it's an important mental thing to keep in mind that the event is really only the start of these relationships or these collaborations, right? What are you doing to make sure that this does not end on Thursday afternoon when the lights go out in the convention center?
Yeah. And here's something, I want to add on to that. I will preach to my grave when it comes to building a personal brand, and how do you grow yourself professionally every single day, right? We can always continue to learn. And for me, I think networking with other thought leaders in the industry is critical. And so when I look at, here are all the speakers that are going to be attending, I think we have well over 100 speakers who are going to be at this event. There's a couple that you might recognize right there, for example. But I think it's one of those things where these are thought leaders in the industry space. Why would you not want to connect with leaders in the industry, for people who are CEOs or principals or directors or companies who are literally running multi-million dollar, in some cases billion-dollar companies? Use this as an opportunity as they're putting themselves out as a presentation or a speaking engagement to go into network with them to make that happen. So this is a critical thing that I always look at. You have a bunch of people who are thought leaders in the industry. Tap into their knowledge and their networking, because they might have input that you need to then help improve your business or your process. And the one thing about this that I like, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my page, for example. You can click on here, and then you can then click on specifically where are all the presentations that they're going to be speaking at? So, Chris, you and I are actually doing 3 presentations. The first presentation is actually virtually on the Smart Manufacturing event where it's Ask the Experts, and that's going to be Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central. So if you're
Pacific, 10 a.m. Pacific.
Yes, 1
Yeah.
p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Go on, and this is going to be live on the platform. So if you're looking at going to the IME West event, register. And there is so many live events happening throughout the week each time. So tomorrow there's going to be a live event as well. I think tomorrow's additive manufacturing and also what is it? Safe cannabis packaging.
Yes. There are a number of cool sessions taking place in advance of the event.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where you can begin to get in and tap into thought leaders in the industry 4 weeks out before the event even happens. And you can begin to establish those relationships and those networking opportunities. So your first time meeting in person is not the first time. And that's one of the biggest things as a guy who was doing sales for 10 plus years. There's no such thing as a cold call or a cold introduction before. You should have had that person should know who you are or know what you're doing before you even meet them in person. So this is a great opportunity for that. But the other 2 events, Chris, that you and I are going to be doing, we're going to be talking about building a better workforce on Tuesday. What are we doing to address the 2.6 million people the 2.6 million jobs are going to be unfulfilled in manufacturing in the automation space. And then on Wednesday, we're going to have a really great conversation. We're going to be talking about Industry 5.0. That's right. The biggest buzzword since 4.0. People, processes, and product working together. And we're going to be having some awesome special guests as well. One of them is going to be from SESME, which is a really world-renowned organization helping smart manufacturing and companies with clean energy, smart manufacturing, and industrial innovation. So it's a really cool platform. But these are just a few events that Chris and I are going to be talking about. Chris, are there any other events that you saw out there that looked interesting to you that you said, I'm going to try and attend that event or make that? There's some really cool speakers that I saw.
Yeah, there's some very unique events. I'm happy to see some folks from the industry I'm familiar with as well. We're talking about some specific things related to, workforce and Industry 5.0, but getting more niche into things along the lines of machine as a service. Other events, you and I have our little Lego minifigures that maybe some people aren't familiar with, but I'll put it more simply. Jake and I are long-term Lego maniacs. And there's going to be a Battle of the Brick Bots event there on Thursday at IME West that I am also personally looking forward to.
Yep, absolutely. Just some great examples though. Brian, he's we know several people at Microsoft. Jeff Winter, he's at Microsoft as well. But Brian, he's autonomous AI co-innovation from Microsoft, so he's going to be giving presentations on autonomous transformation. I mean, that right there sounds like a really fun webinar. Excuse me, live event to go and visit and get a lot of knowledge from.
I'm going to start summarizing because we're at the 25-minute mark there.
Yeah.
One thing I want to mention, we've been talking about prepping for a trade show. The reality is, as you and I have played around in the smart event platform, like to an extent, the trade show's already started, right? Like it's this world we live in now of hybrid events, right? It's not just what takes place during the 3 days of the show, but it's what takes place leading up to that as well. And I think, this is the new normal for, lack of a better term, because I know we've heard that all for too long, but starting to really lean into the digital aspect of these events in advance and then after the fact as well. Yeah. I think if there's one point I do want to just reiterate that we talked about before, Jake, you and I have talked about connecting with speakers, connecting with companies, connecting with other attendees. The reality is, regardless of who that person is or what their role at the event is, it's all about people-to-people connection, right? Like, don't overcomplicate the connection process because you're connecting them as people. You're not trying to pitch them on anything right off the bat. You're trying to create a connection that makes it easy to say yes and start building that relationship while the smart virtual event is going on and before the physical event itself takes place.
Yep. Absolutely. So let's talk about while we're at the trade show for a couple seconds. So we're talking about all the preparation leading up to
Mhm.
it. What are some strategies for me? If you've never been to, or if it's been a couple years, how about that? If it's been a couple years since you've been to a trade show, a few things that I always recommend bringing is a light backpack.
Mhm.
People always hand out those handbags, but honestly, carrying around a handbag in your arm the entire time is always difficult. I always say bring a light backpack, bring a bottle of water, and bring really comfortable walking shoes. There's
Yes.
this idea that's dressed to impress, but honestly, if you are in pain walking around the entire time, you're not impressing yourself at all. So, get a comfy pair of shoes. And I would say that's a big thing. Also, bring your business cards. For me, I always run out of business cards. Make sure you have your business cards up and ready. I got mine ready to go. And that's a big thing as well. But also, have your app on your phone ready to go as well. For me, I always love connecting digitally, and I actually have my barcode to my LinkedIn on the back of my business card, where I always say, hey, connect in person, but let's also, are you on LinkedIn? And that was the biggest question that I always ask exhibitors. If I'm going in person, I want to learn more. They say, well, hey, hand me your brochure. I said, I'm good. I don't want the paper. Do you have social media that I can follow you up on to learn more? So
Yeah.
that's the big thing for me that I always like to take away is connecting with them digitally, because then I can follow them much farther down the road than just a piece of paper that you could leave in your hotel room when you're flying back.
Are you ready for one of my biggest trade show secrets that like helps me out immensely every time I go to one of these? I like all the tips you brought. This isn't that groundbreaking, right? But you mentioned business cards, right? I like writing notes on the business cards I receive. So I have context when I follow up with someone after the show. Because we've all been there before, right? We come back with a stack of business cards and you're like, I forgot when I met this person or what we even talked about, right?
Yep.
Or you could do, like you're talking about connecting digitally, right? If you have a good conversation with someone, you can say, hey, I'm going to connect with you on the app, or I'm going to connect with you on LinkedIn. And you can put just one sentence in there that says, hey, it was nice talking to you about, I don't know, Legos, or it was nice talking to you about additive manufacturing, right? Just something that gives you context or a memory of, hey, why am I following up with this person? Because again, back to my point, you're going to have a lot of business cards that you walk away from the event with, but you want to make sure that you're walking away with at least a few really good connections that can turn into lifelong, business partners, colleagues, friends. Like that's what this is all about. That's why we're excited to get back to the in-person element of these events.
I think the other thing that to mention is winning strategies. You go to events to network. Don't
Mm-hmm.
don't be afraid to introduce yourself to people you don't know. I think a lot of times where like you go and you set a goal to meet with 10 people, like I can't do that. I'm gonna meet with 5, I'm gonna meet with 3. If there's a group on the floor, go in if they're especially during the beer crawl. There's absolutely no reason when we're having those beer events to not go there, or whatever networking event that you're being a part of. The whole reason that networking event exists is for you to meet new people. So
And another thing I'll say is, be open to serendipity, right? Like hallway conversations is what we call
yes,
them, the things that come up with people that you've just met. And it goes back to that, hey, figure out what your must attend sessions are and what your maybe you'd kind of like to attend sessions are. Because let's be real, the cool thing about these events, a lot of times you can get some of the presentations after the event is done. So if you're having a great conversation with someone, or if you've made a great new connection, don't be afraid to like skip a session and grab a drink with them, right? Like that's just real candid trade show 101 type things that go on. So have your plan, make sure you're attending the things that are super important, but have a plan so you know when you can deviate from the plan as
yeah.
well. That's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest winning strategy, right? So we're talking about leading up to the trade show, while at the trade show. What is the best takeaway from trade shows? And I think for me, when you get back all those business cards you've collected, I always like to make sure that I'm following them on LinkedIn, because if I normally got a business card, it's because there's an interest for me. So I like to go and connect with those companies back on social media
Mm-hmm.
to stay in touch. So that's one of the biggest things that I come back and literally I have a stack. Oh no, my stack of business cards must be behind me. But I have a stack of shows where I come back and I literally have them cataloged. So I can say, these were the people that I met at Automate, or these were the people that I met at IMEs last year in New York when I was out there in December. And I literally have those labeled to make sure that I know where I connected with them at. I love doing that. But another big thing is don't let the conversation die out at the end of the trade show. Stay in contact with them, because one of those big things is, especially if they're active on social media, like if you're watching this video right now, it's probably because you're active on social media. Find those people in the industry and network with them and begin to build those relationships more, because you never know whatever industry they're in, especially with the ones at IME West with MDM, Westpac, ATX, D&M, Plastech, right? There's all different industries and shows here besides the one that you're involved with. Branch out and go to the different shows and network with them, and then build those relationships afterwards, because there's probably a lot of cross opportunity between your profession or your industry with the medical devices or plastic injection or automation, as well as the other industries.
Well, in this social media world that we live in, because you're right, the people listening to this today are fairly social media savvy. This is a during the event and after the event type thing. I think we're all really excited to share like posts and photos and things when we're at the event. But hey, take some notes, take photos, and then you can post after the event as well. Say if you're, really interested in working with a particular supplier, right? Take some cool photos of their technology at the booth, and then, a week later, 2 weeks later, whatever it is, say, hey, I really enjoyed visiting Universal Robotics, right? Here's some of the cool things they're working on right now that, I'm glad I learned about at the event. And by the way, it was great meeting Jack, or it was great meeting Sally at the booth as well. You can give shout outs to those people. So be thinking about your post-show social media strategy as well, because that's part of that connection aspect with these people.
Yep, absolutely. And before Chris and I begin to wrap things up, of course, we have the audience here. If there are questions that you have around trade shows, please feel free to put them in the comments. We've been watching the conversations happening on the side of the chat, but if you have conversations about trade shows, feel free to drop them in the comments. Chris and I could ask them. Of course, you could also join us on Thursday on the Smart Event platform with Ask the Experts, and we would love to give you our insights, especially with just all the trade shows that we've been to over the years. You can make a trade show very exciting, or you can make a trade show exhausting, and we would love for it to be the former if possible.
Yeah, we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't say that, hey, this conversation can continue on after this live stream ends, right? You know where to find us on LinkedIn. And, for the main takeaways from this, hey, Jake and I are going to be back on the event platform on Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And Jake has a couple times posted the registration link in there. So make sure you're doing that so you can join us, starting today, really, and get into that Smart Event platform. We hope to see you in Anaheim as well, April 12th through 14th.
Absolutely. And of course, as always, everyone in the comments, make sure you're connecting with everyone in these conversations as well. Grow your audience, grow the people you're connecting with. So, Gail, Mark, Adam, Melissa, everyone who's been chatting in here, make sure you reach out to them and connect with them and begin to grow your network, because we're all interested in how we can win more at in-person and trade show events. Awesome. Well, I think that's about wrapping this up for today. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out to Chris and I. Chris and I, once again, we're going to be at IME West in Anaheim, California. Oh, here we go. I don't know if this is a question from Vlad. Vlad, welcome. Hey, Jake and Chris, I'm tuning in now, but when we watch the replay, it's a very interesting topic, and I've certainly got a lot more to learn from you too on how to properly go on live events. Well, Vlad, we're very happy that you could join us today, and you're always kicking it really well over at Manufacturing Hub.
I'll do a couple highlights here, right? People have been saying, hey, quality over quantity in terms of connections, right? Those 3 to 5 really good connections can be more important than that big stack of business cards. And just seeing folks talking about, let's see here, building a personal brand, connecting on the social platforms, all super important. So, hey, great discussion over in the side of the conversation as well. And I know this will be continuing on LinkedIn after we wrap this up.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, we will see all of you in a couple of weeks at IME West. Until then, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank Chris. And as always, thanks for joining us, Chris.
Stay innovative, stay thirsty.
All right. See you, everyone. Bye.